Hi there, and welcome to the couples area of my Resonate Therapy platform. I really want to welcome you and acknowledge that you've made it this far, so you hopefully have found a little bit of what you're looking for, which is a shared goal of trying to build upon intimacy and find a way forward in creating clear communication from one person to the other. Now, with my background in complex mental health systems and extensive work of working with group therapy, providing experiential workshops, standard group therapy format, and mindfulness-based experiential creative groups, I've got a whole load of experience of working with rupture, repair, boundaries, negotiating needs, and within a couple, all of those things that we first had to learn as an individual within a family system become played out in our relationships now. So I want to acknowledge the bravery that it takes for yourself and for your partner to invite someone else in to begin to witness maybe the things that you're struggling to achieve together. Now, that doesn't mean that your hopes and goals aren't an impossibility, but we need to find a way to find that shared meeting place where both people in the relationship can begin to express their needs and begin to take those risks into vulnerability and intimacy. Now, one of the first things that we need to establish, which would be the case in any group or one-to-one session, just the same as with couples, is creating a sense of stability and safety within the relationship that we are creating as a therapist and as a couple. Now, the ways that we can do that are to pull upon the body and somatic resources. If you're interested to use the creative arts, then I can run creative sensory-based workshops with you and your partner to begin to explore the sensory world in a way that might not be as intimidating or as abstract, as intellectual as the spoken word. So I just really wanted to kind of encourage you, if you're in that place of being unsure whether to begin couples therapy, to reach out and we can book an initial meeting to discuss your needs as a couple. I wanted to share with you an author that's really advocating for the normalizing of feminine bodies, sexual needs, menstruation, menopause, and many other things, but also inclusive of non-gender binary, homosexuality, gay couples, inclusive of every different type of sexuality. And the main principle being that we want to normalize our desires as long as there are two intrinsic things really integrated in that. And the first one being consent, and the second, that it feels good, it brings pleasure. So when we have those two aspects together, we can begin to find a place to negotiate between two different people's creative fantasies, ideas, and dreams to actually create an image together. Now, two really important things, and this is quite a nice sort of way to start to understand your physiology, your nervous system, and the way that we may eroticize or sexualize the world around us, both based upon our past experiences, but also just on kind of just the biology of what's happening in our neurology and physiology. So I'm just going to read you an extract out of Emily Nagoski's book, Come As You Are, The Surprising New Science That Will Transform Your Sex Life. So it's just a couple of paragraphs, and it's really her just describing how the nervous system and brain and body work between two really important states of an accelerator and a brake. So when we treat trauma, or when I treat clients who have trauma, we work with these really simple pieces of language about cues of safety and cues of danger. And the accelerator and brake work in just the same way. So here is what she's written. Your central nervous system, your brain and spinal cord, is made up of a series of partnerships of accelerators and brakes. Like the pairing of your sympathetic nervous system, the accelerator, and your parasympathetic nervous system, the brake, the core insight of the dual control model is that what's true for other aspects of the nervous system must also be true for the brain system that coordinates sex. A sex accelerator and sexual brake. Daniel Kahneman wrote of his own Nobel Prize winning research in economics. He said, you have made a theoretical advance when you can no longer reconstruct why you failed for so long to see the obvious. So it was with Kahneman's prospect theory And so it was with the dual control model. I stand ready to send Eric and John large fruit baskets of the day. So she's really kind of advocating and celebrating that when we can make something accessible and simple, it's like there's really simple truth to be found in that. So she goes on to describe the SES, which stands for Sexual Excitation System. Now, this is the accelerator of your sexual response, which will be so uniquely different to you and your partner. And there may be some meeting ground where there's some magic that can happen. It receives information about sexually relevant stimuli in the environment. Things you see, hear, smell, touch, taste, or imagine. And sends signals from the brain to the genitals to tell them, turn on. SES is the constantly scanning your context, including your own thoughts and feelings, for things that are sexually relevant. It is always at work, far below the level of consciousness. You aren't aware that it's there until you find yourself turned on and pursuing sexual pleasure. Now, this is the piece that's really important when working with a part system. So if we refer to structural dissociation or IFS's theories, then we can begin to understand what's happening on a more unconscious or subconscious level, where we want to ask the parts inside, when we go back to that original point about consent and pleasure, are all the parts of me on board with this right now? And if they're not, then it's very probable that they may manifest in an unconscious process like erectile dysfunction disorder or hypersensitivity for women. So you aren't aware that it's there until you find yourself turned on or pursuing sexual pleasure. Now she's moving on to the SIS, which is the sexual inhibition system. This is your sexual break. Inhibition here doesn't mean shyness, but rather neurological off signals. Research has found that there are actually 2 breaks reflecting the different functions of our inhibitory system. One break works in much the same way as the accelerator. It notices all the potential threats in the environment, everything you see, hear, smell, touch, taste, or imagine, and sends signals saying, turn off. It's like the foot brake in a car responding to the stimuli in the moment. Just as the accelerator scans the environment for turn-ons, the brake scans for anything your brain interprets as a good reason not to be aroused now. Risk of STI transmission, unwanted pregnancies, social consequences. So these are all the things she's exempling that might start to kind of turn the arousal off. And all day long, it sends a steady stream of turn-off messages. This break is responsible for preventing us from getting inappropriately aroused in the middle of a business meeting or at dinner with our family. It's also the system that throws the off switch, say in the middle of some nookie, your grandmother walks in the room. So she's giving those very what we call situational triggers that lead our nervous system to switch state. So our physiology is shifting state. Now, is it in our conscious awareness and choice? Maybe on an unconscious level, there is something going on in the background. And really what we want to do is start to build a dialogue and a deeper sense of embodiment to understand the subtlety and the spectacular density and complexity of what it is to be in a sexual relationship. Yet when things go right, it can be so simple. So we want to find our way towards that simple, keep it simple, stupid place where needs can be met without a sense of fear. So that's kind of really what we're working within the nervous system by wanting to establish cues of safety that create the accelerator and reduce the cues of danger, which is what instigates the braking system. The second brake is a little different. It's more like the handbrake in a car, a chronic low-level, no thank you signal. If you try to drive with the handbrake on, you might be able to get where you want to go, but it takes longer and uses a lot more gas. Where the foot brake is associated with fear of performance consequences, the handbrake is associated with the fear of performance failure, like worry about not having an orgasm. So in this example, I'm just kind of sharing some language and some of the more modern literature on sexuality and on physiology, and the way that we can begin to explore with language and with psychoeducation an understanding of the body. But outside of that biology basis, there is a whole existential, intrapersonal space between yourself and this other person. And by bringing that private but very dynamic space into a therapy session to receive support, then we can begin to work out what those needs are that need to be tended to. And as said from the beginning, it's really about staying in the I position. So one of the really fundamental theorists that we've used in a lot of group therapy is Pia Melody. And she created this frame called the talking boundary. And all it does is it helps us stay in that I position so that we don't dump, blame, shame, or project our own stories onto other people, but instead find a place where we can resonate in a sense of my truth and your truth with one another. And within that truth, we can really start to create intimacy and enjoy sex lives that feel safe and fulfilling and adventurous. Or if they don't need to be adventurous, then they're just pleasurable. So that's a little bit of an introduction to some of the theories and the ideas of work